Hello everybody and welcome again to our podcast. My name is John, I'm a Saha resident as you know, and we're going to be today talking about all things financial I guess, and money and whatever you like about it. Right, so we've got David and Mary here. I'll let them introduce themselves, and we have a special guest again called Emma. She'll be here in a short while to introduce herself and tell you about what she does within Saha. David.
Thanks, John. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast. And yeah, just going on from what John was saying, we're actually going to be talking more to Emma about rent today. Welcome anyway, and over to you, Mary.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Emma joining us. That'll be great. Yeah, it's Mary, part of the customer insight team here again. It should be a really interesting chat, I hope, because obviously finance is very important to all of us in some way or another, you know, whether it's our income or balancing, you know, making sure we balance our finances. It's a very important part of life, I think, isn't it?
Absolutely, Mary. A question's just occurred to me. As we're sort of coming in towards the end of the lockdown now and it's all being eased up, what do we think that the actual furlough that people have endured because of the lockdown has had on their ability to, you know, pay rent, for example?
Yeah, I'm sure it must have been very, very difficult for anyone who was furloughed, not least because I think people were used to working and they might have been in receipt of an income. But I guess, again, you know, this kind of, although I know we're talking about finances today, kind of comes back to our mental well-being, doesn't it? Where if you're not working but still being paid, you haven't necessarily got the same feelings about your worth. And that can cause all sorts of problems. And yes, I'm sure it has had an impact. And as well, there's also the fact that people who were on furlough may well have now been made redundant. So that will have had a massive impact on all of their finances, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was thinking as well, because Saha is, in terms of housing associations, a sort of fairly small one. I wonder if that's had any impact upon Saha itself and its income or ability to collect income.
I think it would be really interesting to bring Emma in, maybe to give us a bit of detail on that, actually, David, because I'm not entirely sure what effect it's had, but it would be very interesting to know from Emma whether there has been an effect and also whether she's had contact with people and what they've actually said to her.
Can I just put a little bit in there as well? Anyway, we've got to remember from our last podcast where we were talking about mental health and sort of getting out and about, you've got to remember that the financial situation hasn't been good for a lot of people, and it will have been detrimental to people's mental health in one way or another. So I'd like just to point out people that we do have a podcast about mental health awareness from our previous podcast. But I'm sure when Emma comes along in a minute, she'll be able to cover a lot of the questions that we've just asked. So let us introduce Emma now. Hello, Emma.
Hi, so I'm Emma. I'm the team leader in the rent department for Saha. Along with myself, we have 2 rent account officers that monitor and process our general needs rent accounts.
Hi Emma, welcome to our podcast today. Lovely to see you and obviously hear from you. A quick question for you from me. In terms of the pandemic and the lockdown, which is hopefully coming to an end fairly soon, can you tell us what effect the pandemic and the lockdown has had on you and your department?
Yeah, the lockdown really was a huge learning curve for everybody in the rent team and I suppose everybody in society. We'd never heard of the word furlough before, And we had tenants ringing up saying, oh yeah, I'm on furlough now. We had people who were self-employed ringing up telling us that they were applying for self-employment grants and allowances. It was a huge learning curve for the team right at the very start. People got paid their furlough quickly, and we spoke to some tenants and advised them that if they were receiving 80% of the wages, there was still an expectation of rent to be paid, but we could look at reducing the rent so that they would only pay 80% while they were only receiving 80% of the wages, and we could work out repaying that when we come back to the end of lockdown. We had lots of tenants who had never before had to claim welfare benefits, were ringing up because some had been laid off permanently, made redundant. So it was a huge change for the rent team because they were having to go online and look at rules and, self-employment grant, trying to advise people on what they needed to do. The impact with the rent figures, although at the start there was an increase in rent arrears, this was because of delays in people receiving furlough or those that had applied for universal credit. We didn't see a huge increase in arrears, but what we did see was an increase in people needing our support in the rent team. As we're now coming out of lockdown, people are returning back to work. People are, coming off welfare benefits because they found alternative employment. And again, there's those changes. So where we was receiving rent for tenants, that will now stop and there'll be an expectation for them to pay the rent. But I think that the biggest thing was the contact with our tenants and the support. And tenants didn't understand what was going on. And we were also in the rent team a bit, okay, what is the self-employment grant? So we were learning as we went along.
Yeah, fantastic, because that was one of the things that I was thinking about furlough, because I was on furlough myself and didn't actually have to worry about paying the rent because it was an add-on. But how do you feel about, I know there are probably some people that maybe you've just sat back and perhaps not contacted Saha. Did you have any evidence of that?
No, I think that there have been people that have sat back and not contacted us, but the way we look at it is, at the time, from the end of March last year up until, let's say, September, October, this was a huge thing for society. People, we've not lived through a pandemic before, and, universal credit was saying don't come into our offices. It was a massive change. So we were a bit more aware of the, people were worried about the rent, but they were also worried about the health and, mums having 3-4 children at home, trying to homeschool, but then think, I've got to speak to the rent team and stuff. So it was a lot more sympathetic and understanding that this wasn't a regular, I'm just not ringing Saha. If I had 4 children at home, I'd be busy. So we were a lot more sympathetic to people's needs, and we did try and contact people, but with a message of, speak to us and we'll see what we can help you with. We had to understand as well that if somebody suddenly had 4 children at home 24 hours a day, they're going to have to feed those, the 4 children, electricity, gas, everything sort of increased. So we did have to take a different sort of approach to how we dealt with people. We are always understanding of everybody's situation, but this was something that we really had to be aware of.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think you've answered actually all my questions that I was going to ask without asking, so that's brilliant. I don't know whether, John, you've got any questions?
Actually, no. For once in my life, I've got nothing to say. I can't believe it.
I have. Can I jump in? Is that okay?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's really lovely to hear somebody from a financial department being so in touch with how people might be, Emma. So I just wanted to say, brilliant, thank you for that, because I think there's a lot of people out there who think finance doesn't mean anybody really cares. So I think it's great to hear that. I just wondered whether you signpost people to other organisations outside of SAHAS. I'm thinking maybe the Citizens Advice Bureau, or do you have that kind of information to pass on to them?
Yeah, so what we do is if somebody is struggling financially and we are aware, the first thing we do is ask them to visit the Entitled To website, because they can put their information in to make sure that they're receiving the correct benefits. I think people assume that welfare benefits are for those that are unemployed, but there are lots of in-work benefits that our residents and tenants can apply for, and there's quite a lot of unclaimed benefit. So we encourage people to go on the Entitled To website. If it's obvious that somebody has severe financial difficulties, then of course we signpost them to CAB or Step Change. But we'll also, because we're so dispersed, we will go online and see if there's anything specific to that area. There's lots of charities and organisations that they could actually go to which are local to them. I know that CAB during the pandemic were overwhelmed with people, and appointments, were rare. So we do try and look locally what there is for our tenants.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's great. And perhaps I should mention that when this podcast is published, it's published out on YouTube and on Facebook. We will make sure that there's a few connections for people that they can link on to with regards to any help they might need. So yeah, that's all I had to ask. I don't know.
Emma, not off topic at all, but not really in light of the current situation with COVID, etc. What are the top 3 issues you face on a daily basis, sort of, if there is a top 3?
Yeah, I think applying for welfare benefit is an issue for some tenants, because from my experience, applying for universal credit isn't as simple as universal credit would like us all to believe, and it can be quite a minefield for tenants. So I think it's important that if somebody's applying for universal credit, we can give you advice on what you need from us, and we can provide information for your rent. I think people, once they fall into arrears, see it as a mountain to climb. And the biggest thing is if that people get in touch with us right at the very start, then we can help them. It's a lot easier to deal with a small amount of arrears than it is to deal with a huge amount of arrears, which can be overwhelming for a tenant. However, if they speak to us, we can make those arrangements that are affordable for our tenants. I think the biggest issue we have with universal credit is that their rules are they can take up to 20% of a tenant's benefit to pay back arrears. And that 20% can range from £40 to £60, £70 a month from someone's benefit. And that's something that we don't want to do, because our arrangements are affordable. We'll ask somebody to pay back £20 a month. However, universal credit will take up to 60, and that's just pushing somebody back into financial difficulties. So I think it's really important that tenants know we will come to an affordable arrangement, and we certainly won't be asking for £68 a month out of benefits. If somebody's working, we'll assess the situation, and I appreciate that people have bills, and just because you're working doesn't mean you can afford to pay £68 a month. So we assess everything on an individual basis. But I think it's the conversation at the start with your rent account officer. And I think it's important for tenants to understand that we are here to offer help and support. We don't want to go down a road where in the end people are losing the tenancies, because that's not what SAHA is about. And the cost of somebody having their home repossessed is huge to SAHA. Yeah. So we don't want to do that, and it's not something that the rent account officers want to do. So it's really important that they speak to us at the beginning if they've fallen into difficulties, or even if they look at the rent statement and think, I'll never pay that back. If they give us a call, we will work something out with them.
Yeah, I know how hard it is. You sort of leave it at the beginning thinking, I'll be, I'll have some money next month or whatever. It's only going to be a short stop, term thing. And then you find out a year's gone by and that amount, that amount has shot up to however much plus interest probably, and then you just end up getting more and more. You sort of like scraping money out of your overdraft and on your credit cards and whatever, and then you just come to a point where there is no more. you've hit the bottom of the barrel, and then you have absolutely no choice but to ask for help. And CAB, I would say, is probably one of the first places to go to, outside of Saha sort of thing, because they've got all the information at the fingertips, and they'll put you in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, the rent account officers and the rent team will never give financial advice. That's not something that we do, because we're not trained financial advisors. No. We can come to arrangements on the rent account, and then we can signpost them to other services. But I think it's important for tenants to remember as well that we don't charge interest on rent arrears. If they were to take money off a credit card to pay the rent arrears, they're going to pay back more than what they're paying on the rent account. So speak to us and let's make an arrangement. Don't be taking money off your credit card, or borrowing from payday lenders, or other loan companies that are out there. Speak to us. We can work an arrangement out, because paying your rent with other debts is just adding to the problem, and we want to solve it. That's our aim.
Yeah, some of those simple solutions like the loans and the lenders or whatever, they turn out to be the worst decision you ever made. So
and if you was to miss a payment, the charges that are then attached to that. Yeah. If you miss a payment on your rent account, of course we're going to send a letter out advising you of the seriousness of the situation, but we're certainly not going to add money to the account. So I think getting that message across, that just because you have rent arrears, it doesn't mean that you're going to lose your home. So give us a call and speak to us, and let us look at the situation and work out an affordable agreement.
Thanks for that information, because there's some bits in there that I didn't know about, and I'm sure other people would be glad to hear it as well.
The message from today is that we should take away, when we've said it before, but I think I'll paraphrase it here from Saha, which is, well, if we don't know, we can't help you, so get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that's it from me, John. I mean, has Mary got anything? She's been very quiet.
I have, haven't
She's always quiet.
Thanks again, Emma. I mean, I think it's been really, really useful, and overriding message for, that I've taken away is get in touch. Just as soon as you can, get in touch. So, thank you. Thanks for your time, Emma. It's been brilliant.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Could I just say, Mary, what would be a good idea to say is that if anybody out there listening does have any questions for anybody, but on this occasion, Emma can be contacted in the usual way, or maybe to the customer insight team, and we'll try and get an answer for them.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have the rent email, which is just rent@saha.org.uk, so they can drop an email as well anytime.
Yeah. Okay, lovely.
I think we've had a couple of technical issues today, and if anybody thinks that they can hear an airplane engine, I'd like to think that Emma's sitting at an airport somewhere ready to go off on holiday. So
I thought it sounded like Concorde actually, but
Well, this background's not real. I'm not at a jumbo sale, really.
You're in Lisbon, Emma, aren't you?
If only.
Yeah.
If only. Yeah. Brilliant.
Oh well, I think we are at the end of our podcast for today. So again, thank you very much, Emma, for coming along and giving us a little bit of information regarding all things rent. I've got nothing more to say for once. David and Mary, it's down to you to say goodbye.
Okay, well, it's thanks, Emma, once again, and it's goodbye from me. We'll see you all next time.
Yep, see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.